It started as a whisper low, cautious, almost conspiratorial. A question passed around the polished halls of Washington like an uninvited ghost. Where is Melania Trump? It wasn't on the official White House briefings. It wasn't discussed in press conferences, but it lived in the space between words. It echoed in newsrooms, fueled late-night monologues, and slid beneath headlines like a quiet rebellion. Since the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States, her husband, once again, Melania, had been conspicuously absent. No East Wing initiatives, no press appearances, no fashionable walks down marble staircases with photographers in tow. Her name had been replaced with absence, her presence with silence. People speculated. Of course they did. Some said she was recovering from a cosmetic procedure gone wrong. Others claimed she was still in New York, refusing to move into the White House. A few went so far as to suggest she was secretly living abroad, away from the chaos of Washington and her husband's relentless political machine. But none of them knew the truth. Only one place had seen her, week after week, like a rhythm unbroken by scandal or gossip. A modest Catholic church tucked away in a quiet Maryland suburb. No photographers waited there, no aides, just a few elderly parishioners, a lonely parking lot, and the echo of hymns that hadn't changed in 100 years. On a cold Sunday morning in early March, she entered as she always did, alone. Beige wool coat, dark glasses, and a scarf pulled tightly around her neck. Her heels made soft, deliberate sounds on the stone floor as she walked to the third pew from the front. She knelt in silence, her hands clasped tightly, not praying, not yet, just breathing. After the service, she didn't leave right away. Instead, she waited until most of the congregation had gone, then slowly approached the old priest at the front of the altar. His name was Father Jerome. His beard was white, trimmed, his posture tired but dignified. "You've been coming here for weeks now," he said, offering a gentle nod. "But today, I see something different in your eyes." Melania removed her glasses. Her voice, when it came, was almost a whisper, yet clear, firm, and burdened with a quiet pain. "I think I've reached a place in my life where silence is no longer enough," she said. Father Jerome didn't answer immediately. He simply waited, hands folded, eyes calm. "I wake up each day and realize I am surrounded by power, but starved of purpose. I'm married to the most visible man on the planet, and yet I've never felt more invisible," she continued, her voice slightly trembling as she spoke. "But you are not invisible to God," Father Jerome replied with warmth. "Nor are you to yourself if you dare to listen." Melania looked away for a moment, as if ashamed. "I'm caught in the middle of a storm I never asked to be part of," she explained. "There's the feud between Donald and Elon Musk, this war of billionaires, and somehow I've become just another pawn in their narrative. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't want my life to become a spectacle." Father Jerome took a step closer. "Then don't let it become one," he said kindly. "Step out of the script they've written for you. God gave you free will, not a contract." Melania's lips tightened. She nodded slightly, unsure if she believed him. "I used to think my role was to be silent, to be graceful, to be a symbol," she said. "But I've started to wonder, what if I want to be a person instead?" The priest smiled gently. "Then perhaps that's why you've come here," he said. "Not to pray for strength, but to remember you already have it." The chapel was empty now. The stained glass windows reflected broken light across the wooden pews. Father Jerome sat beside her in silence, not as a priest giving counsel, but as a man who understood the weight of choices. Melania placed her gloves neatly beside her, her hands resting on her lap. For a long moment, she simply stared at the altar, not in devotion, but in contemplation of what had been, what might still come, and what she had lost in between. "I sometimes wonder if my whole life has been built on image," she said softly, "a curated performance of perfection, the smile, the wardrobe, the silence. But the truth is, I am tired, not physically, spiritually." Father Jerome nodded slowly. "Tiredness of the soul," he said gently, "is the kind that sleep cannot fix. It's the kind that comes when your life no longer aligns with your spirit." Melania leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped again. There are things I've never told anyone, she said. Not my husband, not even Barron. Things I think, if I spoke them aloud, they would unravel the version of me the world believes in. You're not obligated to preserve anyone's illusion, Father Jerome replied, especially not at the cost of your own peace. She turned to look at him now, her voice steadying. Sometimes I lie awake at night, wondering if I failed as a mother. I see Barron growing up in a world shaped by conflict, by ambition, by a father's shadow too large to escape. I tried to shield him, but how do you protect someone from a legacy? You teach him that he can build his own, Father Jerome said quietly. A small silence passed between them. I came to this church because I thought it would give me answers, Melania said. But maybe what I need is not an answer, but the courage to ask the right question. And what is that question? He asked. She looked down at her wedding ring. It sat on her finger like a seal from another life. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she removed it and held it in her palm. Is staying silent still an act of grace, or is it cowardice now? She asked, her voice low and almost breaking. Father Jerome studied her for a long moment. There is no sin in silence, he said, but there can be harm in it if it keeps you from truth. If your silence enables pain, if it buries your voice, then it becomes a prison. Melania closed her eyes. I feel trapped, she admitted, between duty and desire, between being a wife and being a woman. The priest's voice softened even further. You were not created to be either or, he said. You were created to be whole, and sometimes wholeness requires letting go of what others expect. She placed the ring back on her finger, not as an answer, but as a symbol of the storm she had yet to walk through. Outside, the wind began to rise, a cold front sweeping across the stones of the churchyard. But inside, something had shifted. A question had been named, a truth had been spoken, and the woman the world thought they knew was slowly beginning to disappear, only to be replaced by the woman she was yet to become. The following week, Washington was gripped by another media storm. Elon Musk had delivered a blistering statement in front of reporters, accusing Donald Trump of corruption and running a White House like a real estate empire. Cable news played the clip on a loop. Twitter erupted. Press secretaries scrambled to write statements fast enough to stay ahead of the outrage. Once again, chaos ruled the headlines. And yet, far from the noise and podiums, Melania Trump stood in the quiet corridors of their private Mar-a-Lago residence, packing a single leather suitcase. She didn't move quickly. Every item folded was a decision. Every blouse, every scarf, every book placed inside was a piece of herself she chose to take with her, not as the First Lady, not as a symbol, but as Melania. Barron entered the room unexpectedly. Now a young man of quiet strength and intelligent eyes, he had grown into his own kind of mystery, distant from the cameras, yet more aware than anyone knew. Are you leaving? He asked, his voice calm but uneasy. Melania turned and gave him a look that was neither sad nor defiant, just honest. I am not leaving you, she said, her tone deliberate and full of weight. But yes, I'm stepping away from this life, from this noise, from pretending that I belong in a world that never asked me what I wanted. Barron stepped forward, unsure. I don't think Dad will understand, he said cautiously. I don't expect him to, Melania replied. But I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it because I have spent too many years making my silence more valuable than my soul. She sat on the edge of the bed, motioning for Barron to sit beside her. Your father and I, we were never like the other couples in Washington, she explained. He is fire, I am ice. And for a long time, that balance worked. But eventually, the heat burns everything, and the cold freezes the heart. We stopped listening to each other. We stopped seeing each other. Barron looked down, fiddling with the cuff of his shirt. Do you still love him? He asked quietly. Melania inhaled deeply. In my own way, yes, she said. But love cannot exist where voice is lost. It becomes a performance. And I'm done performing. A long silence passed between them. What will you do now? Barron asked. I don't know, Melania admitted. I will go somewhere quiet, somewhere I can hear myself think. I may write, I may volunteer, I may do nothing. But whatever I choose, It will be mine. Barron looked at her, a kind of admiration forming in his eyes, not for the First Lady the world remembered, but for the woman in front of him now. "You're not running away," he said slowly. "You're choosing yourself." She smiled faintly. For the first time, she said, "Yes." As the sun began to set, Melania stepped outside. Her security detail waited in silence, not asking questions. They had been briefed. She would not be taking interviews. She would not be holding press conferences. There would be no public statement, just a handwritten note left on her personal stationery inside the East Wing. "I was never missing. I was just unseen. I no longer wish to be invisible." Melania. And with that, the car pulled away. In Washington, the chatter didn't stop. Pundits speculated. Analysts dissected. News outlets asked each other the same question they had been asking for weeks. Where is Melania Trump? But now the question had evolved. It was no longer about physical presence. It was about agency, about voice, about the cost of standing quietly beside power when your heart is quietly breaking. For some, her absence was betrayal. For others, it was bravery. But for Melania, it was something far simpler, a reclaiming of time, of choice, of identity. And perhaps that's the part America still struggles to understand, that sometimes the most radical act a woman can commit in public life is not to speak or to scream, but to leave, quietly, deliberately, without apology. Because the First Lady is not just a title. She is a person. And sometimes, even in the most visible house in the world, it takes vanishing to finally be seen. Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.